Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the portal, kind of broke down all the different big time players in there. A lot of really talented wide receivers and a lot of really talented quarterbacks that I assume will get a little bit more crazy as we move on. But let's get to the players and the coaches under the most pressure as we head into this weekend. And it's quite a big list, frankly. There's a lot of different guys. Pretty much every single guy on every single team is under quite a bit of pressure as we head into this weekend. But I wanted to start with Dan Lanning. I think he has an interesting position as you go into the end of this year because you were roughly in this position last year. Now, not quite in the catbird seat that you are right now, but you were in with a win over Washington. I think everyone felt that way. I don't think it was much of a question, frankly. If they were to beat Washington, they were probably in the dance. They came up a little bit short. Now you're in a position where you're in the dance regardless. There's no doubt about that. You were going to be in this thing, but you kind of want to send a message. You kind of want to be the team that's the number one team in the country, that's the betting favorite going in to win the national title, that is the team to beat. I think this is the moment where they kind of put their flag in the Big Ten, where they win it. They dominate another big-time team in the Big Ten. They beat Ohio State earlier in this year. Beating Penn State this time around would be huge to kind of show yourself that you can beat all three of the big-time teams. As you came in, it was Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan. You would have beaten all three of them in 1 year in your very first year in the conference. That would be a huge statement to just about everyone else. And the big thing here is just keeping your guys engaged, keeping your guys as locked in as they were in week 1 as they will be in week 13. That is not an easy thing to do. It is a very, very difficult thing to keep your guys fully engaged the entire year. We've seen different moments where Oregon has waned just a little bit in that Wisconsin game and some others, but at the end of the day, he's done a great job. He's done a really, really incredible job of just making sure that everyone is ready to roll, that everyone is playing with kind of reckless abandon at certain moments, a lot of really good energy around there, and I think these defenses are going to be tested a ton. His X's and O's are going to get a little bit more complicated. They're going to get a little bit tougher to game plan for because you're playing an elite quarterback pretty much every single time you get on the field. You're playing an elite offense pretty much every single time you get on the field. So if they want to finish up top, it has to be elite X's and O's. It has to be elite motivation. And it has to be a guy that makes all the right decisions when they badly need him to. I think the decision against Wisconsin to run a fake field goal was an interesting one. He got away with it. Maybe you can't make that decision in these big time moments this weekend and beyond this season. And then on the other sideline will be Drew Aller and this Penn State team, and I think you have everything right there. You have everything right there, and Michigan gave you the opportunity to get everything right there, where you can win this game, possibly get the 1 seed in the CFP, and suddenly be the team to beat in this race. Obviously, plenty of people would still be doubting Penn State. I'm not doubting that by any means, but he's got to play his best game of the year if you're Drew Aller. One way or the other, you have to be able to put points on the board because Oregon's going to. They're going to find a way to put points on the board in this game. You might just have to go punch for punch with them. If you can't, then you very well could get boat raced in this game. You're going to have to be very careful about the way you go about business. Now, the good thing for him is the run game should get going in this one. You have two good of running backs. You have a very solid offensive line. You should be able to run the ball with minor success, at least in this one. But at the end of the day, at some point, Drew Aller is going to have to step up. He's going to have to go punch for punch with Dillon Gabriel in this Oregon offense. Does he have that ability? And at some point this playoff, and maybe even on Saturday, he's going to have to prove that one way or the other. Quinn Ewers, I've talked about this before. I think he's the most important player when you talk about the CFP race going forward, and you're stepping into an SEC championship where you can kind of stop all the talk. There's a lot of people that are saying that maybe it should be Arch Manning that gets the start over the next little bit. He's the one that can give them a national title chance, and then you have others talking about Quinn Ewers as if he's just not very good at football. I don't agree with that by any means. I think he's very talented, very good player. And frankly, if they were to win this weekend, you have a chance to give yourself a national title, a real national title chance as the 2 or the 1 seed. Your NFL draft stock would go up by an insane amount. You would be in a really, really good position if you were able to go out there and play your best football. He's played it at different moments this year. It's been a little bit hit or miss at different times. Played incredible game against Michigan, got injured, had a little bit of rough stretch in the middle, played really good football in certain parts of that game against A&M, including that second quarter. Is going to have to play that throughout the 4 quarters he has on Saturday and really going forward. This team is going to get after him. They're going to make him move, and he's going to have to rise to the challenge, or it's going to look a lot like it did the first time around in Austin. Malachi Starks is the guy that I'm talking about for Georgia, and it's a little bit off the beaten path. But when I talk about this defense overall, I think they just need a guy. They need a guy that can make that big time play, like he does right there, or he can, get everyone set. And he's really the general of that back end. And when you talk about Georgia right now, I think the back end might be the most important. Obviously, the front seven is where their money is made. That's where a lot of the really talented athletes are. That's where a lot of the guys that are going to change the game will be. If that back end can hold up, if that back end can say, we got 5 guys back here, we don't have to worry about, dropping more linebackers into coverage, dropping possibly Jalen Walker, some of these edge rushers into coverage, we don't have to worry about that. We can handle the back end. Y'all do what you do. They're going to be able to get after the quarterback. They're going to be one of the better defenses in the entire thing, because when Jalen Walker, when Michael Williams are just let off the leash and let go to work, it's a problem for just about anyone on the offensive line. So you're in a position where you need the back end to step up, and sometimes it just comes down to the guy that leads your group, the guy that's kind of the leader of your team in a lot of different ways, just to step up in big time moments. When he's in that building, he likes to make big time plays. We'll see if he can do it on Saturday and then going forward the rest of the way this season. Cam Skattebo is a guy that I think he might be the single most important player this weekend, in championship weekend, because you don't have Jordan Tyson. If you're Arizona State, you're not going to have the passing game that you're very comfortable to have with Jordan Tyson. So now you're going to have to find openings with Cam Skattebo. You should be able to find openings. This Iowa State run defense is not necessarily elite by any means. You should be able to find a way to run the ball, to find a way to get downfield, and find a way to get Cam Skattebo rolling. It's going to be a tall order, because Iowa State knows that. Iowa State knows that the back end should be more than fine against the receivers that they have. They're going to lend a lot of guys to the box. They're going to lend a lot of guys to hitting Cam Skattebo and making sure that he doesn't necessarily have the strength to go full 4 quarters at his full strength. So definitely a lot of things to watch. He's going to have to step up big, and without Jordan Tyson, this offense can be anemic at times. It's going to come down to Cam Skattebo to make sure it doesn't get to that point. Dabo Swinney he was given a chance, and kind of like the same thing at Penn State, but frankly, Clemson has no business being in this position, but they are. They're in a position where they can beat SMU, be one of the teams that gets the bye in this thing, and then we'll see what happens from there. A very, very interesting moment. I do have Clemson winning this game, which I didn't feel great doing, if I'm being honest. Love SMU, but at the end of the day, I just couldn't go away from Dabo Swinney and Clemson. And I think more than anything, it's just proving that you're still Clemson. We just talked about them in the recruiting world. They're not doing enough. They're definitely fading in that respect, in the talent respect. And now you're just going to have to figure out what happens. If you lose here, you're 2 years without an ACC title, without a CFP berth, and more than that, without a CFP berth, and you're going to have to figure out what happens going forward. You're going to have to figure out what the portal looks like this offseason, if it looks like anything this offseason, and then see what happens in 2025. This is a huge weekend for Dabo Swinney, where a lot of things could change for the better or for the worse around there, and the worse feels a little bit more attainable right about now. So it's going to be interesting to see what they can do. Obviously have to scale their performance in a better way than they have all year. Lost to the 3 best teams that they played all year, so they're going to have to play better football. There's no doubt about that, and we'll see what they can do, and maybe it changes this program for the better or the worse this upcoming weekend. And then we'll talk about the coach that's doing it tonight. Barry Odom has a huge one tonight, and he's been one of the biggest names on the coaching market the last couple of weeks. It could be delayed a couple of weeks if he were able to win this one, but he's more than fine to do that. He is more than happy to wait a little bit to take that new job and take his team to the possible playoff. Now, he's going to have his hands full. You're going to have to slow down Ashton Genty, who we'll talk about here in a second, but a very, very tough guy to deal with. And frankly, the first time around, he did a relatively good job. He still got his. He still got over 100 yards, still got a touchdown, still was a big-time player in that game. You're going to have to do maybe even a little bit better this time around. And overall, even beyond Barry Odom, this staff in general has a couple of guys that are going to be big-time names on the coaching market. Brendan Marion is a guy that I absolutely love. I think is going to get, at the very least, a big-time offensive coordinator position. I've seen Oklahoma State be kicking around that name a little bit, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Definitely would be a huge feather in their cap if they were able to get to the playoff and say, walk into that room and say, I can take your team to possibly play for a national title, and not be a little bit facetious on that. You're in a really good position going forward. So I think it's a huge weekend for Barry Odom and Brendan Marion to just make a little bit of money. Let's be totally honest. So the way they'll do it is slowing down this guy and finding a way to beat this guy, and it's really the last chance to steal some votes for number 12 over there in Boulder. You're going to have to find a way to possibly put on a performance that takes people by storm. It's going to be really, really hard to do. I'll be totally honest. Feel like the gap is pretty aggressive right about now. I think Travis Hunter's pretty much locked that thing up. That being said, you put up 300 yards and 3 scores on tonight, a lot of people will be finding their way to find a way to vote for Ashton Genty in this thing. So, not saying he'll win it, but definitely a moment where you could take over the game, be in a position where maybe there's a little bit of more intrigue going into that Heisman ceremony. But even beyond that, you have the ability to take your team to the CFP, be the number one running back in the country, one of the best running backs in recent history, and play for a national title. So, plenty of pressure beyond the draft stock and beyond all the craziness around some of the different Heisman stuff and that type of thing. But at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. When we're talking about Ashton Genty, we'll see if he can possibly get back into that dance. I think it'd be really hard to do, but maybe he has that ability. Who knows? But it's an incredible group. I think when you talk about Championship Saturday just overall, it's always going to be a nightmare. There's always going to be a lot of people. There's always going to be a lot of individuals that have to deal with a ton of pressure going into this weekend. I think Dan Lanning might take the cake. I think he's in a position where everything you want is right in front of you. You've done an incredible job of building up this program to what it's been today, to getting it recruiting at a level that is absolutely elite in every sense of the word. Now it's about finishing in the job. Now it's about doing the things on the field that show what you're doing behind the scenes is working. That show, you are moving in the right direction. You're the number one team in the country. You're undefeated. You're playing incredible football. You lose on Saturday. There's a lot of different conversations happening. There's some conversations of, is Oregon not quite as good as we thought? Are there no elite teams, and Oregon just another team that is kind of in this hodgepodge of good but not great teams? You're in a position where a lot of people are questioning whether or not you were just a team that can get up for big moments in the regular season but can't quite get up for those big time games in the postseason. There's going to be a lot of questions. If Dan Lanning were to go down this weekend, Quinn Ewers kind of the exact same thing. If they were to go down this weekend and possibly Quinn Ewers were to turn over the ball a couple of times or get sacked a couple of times, there's going to be a lot of arch talk as you get a little bit closer to CFP, whether that's fair or not. There's going to be a lot of it, and you're going to have to figure out how to navigate that, and it comes down to this weekend. If you win this weekend, a lot of that conversation will go away. If you don't win this weekend, that conversation will get louder and louder, and you'll have to figure out how you handle it. So a lot of different people, a lot of different players and coaches under a ton of pressure this weekend. Dan Lanning might take the cake. Quinn Ewers might be very shortly behind him. So a lot of different things going into this week, and obviously we will update you on all of it on Monday when we get back, but let's get to a little bit of weekend wrap-up after this break. We'll take a break here, and then we'll get to a couple of headlines, some coaching carousel stuff, some injury news, just some random stuff just to get you a little bit of a wrap-up as we get into this upcoming weekend. So stick with us, and we'll be right back with that.